The image we're looking at here is the image from the riots in Dublin in November of 2023 and all of the damage that was caused and the injuries to the public, to guards, and the general mayhem that occurred on that occasion. And that's a classic example of public disorder in the worst phase. On the bottom right of your screen, you'll see that I've in red enclosed the Dáil September of 2023. The issues there when the Dáil was reopening. The riot in Dublin, obviously, the one referred to in the image, November of 2023. The anti-migration protests taking place in Coolock, and also more generally over the last 2 years. They seem to me to belong in a totally different category than the British Embassy of 1972, which was an enormously serious riot as such, the H-Block riots of 1981, an anti-globalization protest in 2004, which deserves a separate mention a little later because of the tactics used there by the Garda, and the Love Ulster serious disturbance in the centre of Dublin in 2006. So it seems to me, and I think it seems to a lot of people, there's a different element present for the, if we call them the anti-migration, and I would prefer the title anarchists. These are people who want to disrupt, who don't have an agenda. And they're quite different in their character. They're quite different in their character from the previous rights. So the lessons learned from the earlier history of the Guards and right control or public order policing may not apply as neatly, but some certainly do. And in a short moment, we'll be looking at what the capacity is of the Guards or in the current situation. So one approaches the current situation, the anti-migration, all of the issues, public order issues that arise from that, and have a realistic look at a number of areas. The capacity of the Guards to deal with the current situation. Well, the first thing to take on board is that the capacity of the uniformed part of the Garda service has been extremely strained for a number of years, and generally it is well recognised that it's under strength and under strain, and lots of different changes have been made to the Garda structure, where in no way helpful to the idea of a coherent Garda organisation. But the basic lack of numbers is a problem. So that's a capacity issue in relation to numbers. There may also be a capacity issue in relation to equipment and training, and that is also very relevant. The second point I'm looking at there is who has senior strategic command of the operational policing response to situations like Coolock, like to all of the areas around the country where there has been this measles-like outbreak of disorder relating to migration. Who has the senior command position? And I'm not referring to the Commissioner, and I think actually I'm quite mystified as to why the Commissioner seems to speak on every occasion about this topic, where clearly there has to be a level of senior command dedicated to this issue. So who owns the issue in the senior operational sense of the Garda? That's something that isn't known or is not widely known, and it would be very helpful if there was such a position filled by somebody who has the competency, the capacity, and the resources to command at that level. Speaking about tactics, certainly in my own experience, I think, and of many other Gardaí, is the hand-to-hand combat, which was really characterised a lot of the earlier exchanges that I mentioned earlier in the 70s between the Guards and rioters, is not a productive strategy unless there is no other option. Ideally, both the policing component and the other side need to be kept physically apart, and that's done by a number of ways, not necessarily by barriers, because they can be used as a weapon almost against the Guards themselves. Certainly by the tactical use of water cannon in the appropriate circumstances. There is no question that there is a one-size-fits-all. Considering the anti-immigration and migration issues can occur all over the country, and of course it's difficult having regard to capacity that the Guards would have the necessary numbers and personnel and equipment in place. And when one speaks about numbers, equipment in place, clearly into that goes training as well. And the training for public order, as I know, having been involved in it, is a modular kind, in terms of control, built up like a Lego system. A sergeant controls so many guards, an inspector controls so many sergeants, a super controls so many inspectors. Essentially, you have a command structure, but of course that command structure has to be based on trained competency. It's not just a question that the rank does it. So there are lots of issues around that. Tactically, one remains to be convinced that the current tactics are really productive in the overall. Intelligence gathering, who's involved, what are their intentions? They're flying drones over sites. What is known about them? How can that be preempted legally and operationally? A very important part of the situation. Mentioned the point already that it's possible that a disturbance can happen in any part of the country, and they require varying different approaches from the guards. And that's why I said that often the best approach is the ability to be able to respond by exception, not necessarily following the tactics of the previous one, but having a good level of response capacity. And these are all very demanding of a Garda organisation under pressure. Where public order is concerned, it is absolutely essential beyond all doubt that public confidence has to be maintained for the greater part. There will always be those who are not very happy with the law enforcement agencies, regardless of what happens. But public confidence is the essential ingredient in a democratically policed society like in the Republic of Ireland. So that is very important. The government owns migration, from a policy point of view, from a departmental point of view, and they have, obviously and correctly, overall responsibility. But coming down to individual responsibilities, there is no gainsaying the fact that the Garda own the streets, or they must own the streets, because from that comes all of the public confidence, also confidence within the Garda organisation itself. And I would respectfully suggest that there are enormous issues at the moment that really do not comprehend the size and scope of the emerging threat from these organisations, small in number but malicious in intent.